Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to Base Hit. You know, we decided that we're going to start putting out some more regular content, maybe come up with a topic, maybe not. But we got a topic for you today and the idea of this came because I got really fired up about something that Clone and I were talking about, and I feel very strongly about it. So the topic for today, and we're going to try and keep them a little bit shorter because you know I have a propensity to talk a lot, but this is a meaty topic too. It's should steroid era and specifically guys that tested positive for steroids be allowed in the Hall of Fame. Now, I feel strongly about my opinion, but before I tell you my opinion, let me introduce you to who else is joining me today. First is McKilla joining us from beautiful Oklahoma. And he's wearing a San Francisco shirt. Maybe it tips you off how he feels. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And also our friend Citizen Clone. Gentlemen, welcome.
How you doing?
Good.
Good to see you, Mac.
Good, man. How are you?
Good.
Good to thanks
We
for
already
making
shared
the
beard
time.
stories off camera. We were all comparing beards.
I thought that's what this was about. I'm lost now.
I actually think I have the most gray hair in terms of total length of hair.
That's probably true.
So
On
All right.
one hair.
We're already failing. Back on track.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. All right. So I think we should just, in no more than 2 sentences, declare like how we feel about this, and then we can defend it. But at least let's get on record on how we feel about it.
We're gonna say it at the same time because we're all gonna.
Well, no, we're gonna say it one at a
I'm just
time.
kidding. Go ahead.
Mac, why don't you start? Just real short. Just we'll dig into it after you say it.
Real short to answer your question. Yes, they should be in the Hall of Fame.
Boom. That was one sentence. He didn't even need.
I don't need more. I'll defend it later, but I'm right and everyone else is wrong.
Clone.
I would say that I'm perfectly fine with them not being in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. Yeah. That I like how you phrased it. It didn't sound like you were angered by it or anything, but also you're winning right now because they're all off the veterans ballots right now. And I would say with voracious tenacity, believe that they should all be in the Hall of Fame, and I'm willing to defend it to the end of time. All right. So we're going to get into it, but I just want to make a quick declaratory or declaratory statement about why I feel so strongly this way. I have 3 main convictions about this. One is the hypocrisy angle, that how dare they allow Bud Selig in the Hall of Fame if they're not going to let everybody else, when clearly after he botched baseball in the 1994 player strike, and the best way to get it back was to turn his blind eye to the home run race between McGwire and Sosa. But not only just turn a blind eye, but they leaned into it with their marketing at the time. If you remember the comic book superhero back, they did that on purpose, and he turned a blind eye until it started popping with Congress, and then he turned on the players and did the commission report. He put all these players on trial publicly, and then they let Bud Selig in the Hall of Fame when one player can take steroids for himself, but he took steroids for the whole league. And then now I'm just gonna let me finish here. So the other part of the hypocrisy that makes me so mad is that cheating in general, but also performance enhancing drugs have been part of baseball forever. And there's a whole bunch of guys. In 1889, James Pud Gelvin was injecting himself with testosterone from a dog. This is true story. A guy named Brown Seckard, I think his name is, a scientist, came up with this idea that you could inject yourself with testosterone. Guess who else did it? Babe Ruth. And when Babe Ruth got caught injecting himself with testosterone, you know what he said? I only did it once and it made me sick. I'm never going to do it again. Kind of sounds like, Rafael Palmeiro or Clemens or whoever else. But then throughout the era, you know, in the 70s, guys were taking amphetamines. They're all in the Hall of Fame. The Big Red Machine all made it. They were all coked out of their minds. And then you got, with the exception of Pete Rose, but we'll make that a future show. And then you got guys like Whitey Ford admitting while he was playing that he was scuffing the ball. Gaylord Perry talking about the spitball. There's been guys throughout that admitted cheating through the whole thing. All those guys are in the Hall of Fame. I will shut up now, but that is why I feel so strongly about this. The greatest era of baseball, 1998, saved baseball, brought the fans back, and it's because of steroids. Now, I'm not celebrating steroids. I'm just saying they knew what they were doing. It was part of the business of baseball, and we're all better for it. I'll stop right there. No more needs to be said. I'm closing the laptop. Have a good night, everybody. Whoa! All right. That's my statement. Who wants to go next?
So you're saying we should go
Oh.
back and take Bud Galvin out, right? Is what
No, I'm
not.
saying the opposite. I'm not even sure Galvin got into the Hall of Fame, but certainly Babe Ruth did.
I totally understand the hypocrisy argument. I just believe you can't go back. You got to deal with the rules at hand. The people that are voting got to deal with what they know. So I'm not legislating what happened in the past.
But what you're talking about gets to the political aspect of the voters. Like if they don't like you, you're not getting in. And there's guys that haven't gotten in just because the writers don't like them.
The Hall of Fame, there's nothing official. The Hall of Fame is a side. It's not MLB. It's a side organization party that everybody gets together and honors people. And the idea that you're obligated when somebody's cheating, when somebody gets caught, that you have to honor them no matter what. I mean, one of the only things that you have is no. I mean, like if you're making a list of the best 100 guys of all time, then that's different. You're going by stats, you're doing everything else. But when it's a damn honor, the idea that you have to do it no matter what just pisses me off. That's my main thing.
All right. Matt?
And I think it's as legit as anything to be able to say we're not going to honor this guy. Anyway.
I think actually both your clone's point that he just made is a good. It is a separate entity than baseball. I mean, than MLB. It absolutely has some, and all of the Hall of Fame selections have personal bias involved with them due to the nature of it being voted on by individuals that have their opinions. It is what it is. I don't personally agree with how they do it, but it is what it is. I also agree
with the process or how they've been voting.
I don't agree with their opinions. I guess I don't know that I could nitpick the process, but I don't necessarily off the top of my head have a better solution. So I'm not going to sit here and nitpick their process. I do think it's a bit of the old guys of, yesteryear that are gatekeeping on a certain extent. And that's really what my issue becomes. The hypocrisy is a valid point that I do agree that there's a hypocrisy of, you let Selig in, his entire, okay, I don't want to exaggerate, a very significant portion of Selig's tenure and successful time as a commissioner was the steroid era. And it was bringing baseball back after 1994. So I agree with that, but it's not actually the reason why I think they should be in the Hall of Fame. The reason is real simple to me. What's the intent of professional sports? In my opinion, it's entertainment.
Yep.
It's about fans. And it's not entertainment home runs. Those home runs entertain me. I'll admit that, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is that they have decided, the writers, and this is my issue that I was just mentioning, Clone, the writers have decided they're going to gatekeep an entire generation of players. As a fan, that pisses me off. The individuals that I grew up watching play baseball that got me hooked on the sport are being kept out by a bunch of old hypocrites, in my opinion. That's really the crux of it. My problem is you're keeping out my entire generation. if you're saying to me that you want that generation, okay, that's an exaggeration. They haven't kept out every player.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say we're going to keep out all the steroid users of this era, by proxy, you're telling me you don't really care about my generation of players that I watched growing up. And so that being said, if that's going to be the stance, well, my stance is, well, F you, then I don't want anything to do with it. But I don't think that's what they want. I actually think they want us as fans. They want me to spend money. They want me to watch. They want me to invest in it. Well, Barry Bonds should be in the damn Hall of Fame. I'll make it personal. Roger Clemens should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. It's a strong argument because
that's it for me.
Well, I've been thinking you hit me there because I've been thinking about, like, I don't want to reward the fact that we're just saying you're going to give the absence of the reward to the guys. Like, that's fine by me. But if you're appealing to that, I'm hurting poor Mac because he doesn't get to celebrate, then you're hurting the fans. Then you get a little bit to a soft side of me in that. But let me make an argument to you guys because you guys are making me think about it. So we're talking about that. So what about, like, how opinions have changed on stats, right? Should we go back and re-legislate to a time when it was all counting numbers now? Like, don't we all agree that it's better to be able to do this analysis and figure out who goes in much more advanced ways than we used to be able to? Do we have to stick to the same standards that we used back then? Don't we agree that it's changed and it's gotten better? I'm just going to talk about the consistency there. Or do we just say, 500 home runs, you're in, 400, whatever?
Those steps, the 400, 500, 600 home runs. Yeah, I mean, it's disingenuous to say that they haven't changed. There was definitely an era from, 1995 to 2005, maybe a 10-year, decade there, where I think arguing otherwise is just not being truthful. Does Bonds hit 700 home runs without the use of steroids? No. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like that. Is he a Hall of Fame player, regardless of the steroids, in my opinion? Yes. I realize that's a slightly different point than what I was saying before, because I think he's a unique one where you can talk pretty well about kind of two halves of a career. But to your point, no, he doesn't hit 700 home runs without the use of steroids. That famous number of Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth that ledge doesn't get touched by him. So, and I don't know what the solution is, but I think that's a fair point. Do we have the ability to smooth out that somehow over the eras? I don't know. There's probably smarter people than me that can answer that.
I would argue that becomes a super slippery slope, though, because you almost have to judge. And I think this is the argument to allow steroid era players into the Hall of Fame, is you have to judge the eras almost independent of themselves, because you could go back generation after generation and say, well, before baseball was integrated, like, how do you judge that? You can't, and there's no real way to create a bizarro world where you can meld all that. But I do agree there's players that when you go back and look based on how we rate players now, that they're like WAR or their OPS plus would put them in the Hall of Fame, but because they were batting 212 and they didn't know what BABIP was.
Or the other way, that there's guys in that when you have modern stats, you'd be like, oh, why in the hell is that guy in there?
Yeah, well, I think it becomes a one-way door, though, because as soon as you let somebody in, you can't take that away, because that's where your honor argument does come up. It's like, once they're honored, you can't dishonor them.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying don't do it, because you can't take it back. We can't take back the other guys. What are we gonna do? No. The other thing that got me back from what you're saying is because my argument that Jason really doesn't like, because I feel like there's people that want the Hall of Fame. You go there and you see the best players of all time. I understand that.
Best players of all time that they liked.
In my opinion, you put them in posthumously, so they don't get to enjoy it themselves.
Oh, that is
as soon as Bonds is gone, then you can put him in. As soon as Rose.
Every time Pete Rose talks about this, he cries. It is the meanest, cruelest thing that they could ever do, because now they're using the Hall of Fame in a vindictive, as a weapon. It's such a nasty, gross argument. It's like, we're not going to let him enjoy it at
I
all.
feel like
We're getting into the
Matt's okay with
semantics
this
of-
idea.
Yeah, we gotta leave Pete Rose and maybe even but
Yeah.
they didn't let Shoeless Joe in.
Yeah.
He's been dead for I don't know.
Now, the
how
whole
many years.
question is what is for, that specific case, and obviously you could delve into that topic for a very long time, is what does for life mean? It really is, what does banned for life mean in the Rose scenario?
Like the life of the human race or the life of
is it when you said banned for life, that you're banned for life, does that mean
Yeah.
your lifetime? And as soon as you're dead, you're eligible now? Or did they mean the life of the Hall of Fame? No, but that is the semantic argument with Rose. And Clone's point, and I think there's some validity to, is, do you want the Hall of Fame to be the best of the best players, or do you want the Hall of Fame to be the history of baseball?
Or do you want it to be a judge of morality by sports writers who have no business judging morality?
But you were just saying a second ago that you had to judge the eras by themselves. Isn't that the argument? So era, everybody judging by themselves and deciding in this era, screw those guys.
But you can't because and I understand your argument where you're saying it's not an MLB thing, but that just exacerbates the idea of why it's wrong. It's just then it's just an elitist club of morality.
That is my problem with it, is it feels like that's what's being applied, is that it is a gatekeeping club that is occurring right now. And I take it personal because it's my generation of players that I watch. Realistically, if we were talking about players from 10 years earlier, I would probably care less. Or maybe 15 years earlier, because I don't have that attachment of my memories. I have my memories, and it's like, well, I still watch them hit more home runs than everybody else.
Yeah.
I still watch them be the elite of their generation. Regardless of the level of home runs their generation was hitting, they were still the elite of their generation. And that's what bugs me.
Let me add a fly in the ointment to what you just said, Mac, because this is the other problem I have with it, is there's guys in the Hall of Fame that for sure we'd all agree the court of public opinion would say definitely did steroids, but they either didn't come up in the right report or it got swept under the carpet or whatever. Or in David Ortiz's case, when him and Sammy Sosa didn't test publicly ever, but then all of a sudden it came up later that him and David Ortiz did pop or something, but David Ortiz still gets to walk in because everybody liked it.
Likes him. He's very likable.
So that's why you almost can't do it that way. You almost have to just say, let's just let the best players in, because clearly they weren't testing properly at that time. And when they first started it, the randomized testing was so sporadic that a small group of people got popped when really probably a multitude of that were really doing steroids at the time.
And that's the problem with, that circles back to, I think you and I both agree on the hypocrisy with Selig argument, is MLB didn't want to find positive test. They absolutely
they wanted home runs.
They wanted no test or negative test. They didn't want positives. They themselves didn't want it. So, is the Hall of Fame supposed to be the best players, or is it supposed to be a history of baseball? I would actually argue in both cases the steroid era should be there, but I think that's kind of the crux of it, because if it's history, it's an era. They should be there. If it's best of the best, I think you still put in the best of the era. That's
about having a room of the Hall of Fame that's
call it the Hall of Steroids era.
I would take that for sure.
It's half lit and it's got cobwebs and they make it really bad, and that's where they put all the steroids.
There's roaches running around.
Yeah, you get.
These are the ones
that one.
We don't want to talk about them, but they did save the sport. So
Are there guys? Well, we could talk. So Bonds and Clemens, to me, I would never argue that they weren't going to get in, that they needed the steroids. But aren't there guys that were on the edge that
that's what steroids. That is absolutely.
Who's somebody that was on the edge that would get in if you were just going straight on stats? That probably that was steroid.
Jim Tomei. He had 500 home runs, but when you look at him pre and post, he was a whole different player as soon as he started roiding.
And he never tested positive, right?
Should he be in or not?
Well, you know my argument.
Well, you think everybody should be in? Then it's just the Hall of Medium.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. Tony never tested positive, right? He was one of the group that never
I
did.
don't know.
I don't think he did.
I don't think
to this
him
day
or
he's
Bagwell or I'm not even sure Caminiti did.
If he tested, no, I think Caminiti was already broke down basically, and if I recall right,
Yeah.
he
Won
was
2 MVPs and then broke apart,
and then just was gone.
But like, I guess Ken Griffey's not a good example of that. But like, there was always like shadows around Ken Griffey. But even bringing it up
Griffey's
in conversation, people get super angry about it because they want to idolize this guy because he was great. He was great to watch. And so if you could go back in time and say, Mac, you get a choice that no one ever finds out about Bonds doing steroids, would you do it? You would, because you idolize the guy and you don't want him like being remembered in the way that he is. So like some guys got a free pass on that and others didn't.
And this is the way, and this is my thoughts on it. So in like all cards on the table, if you were to ask me, so the Giants Angels World Series in 2002 was the one where the Giants were up 3-1, blew the series. Tim freaking Salmon for the Angels had some really clutch hits in Game 6 specifically. Anyways, if you were to say to me, you knew Bonds did steroids, he positive, he's kept out of the Hall of Fame, but you win that World Series, or you don't win the World Series, you never know about any of it, he's in the Hall of Fame, I'm taking winning that World Series. And you know what? That result is entirely how it could have played out if freaking Tim Salmon didn't make some incredible hits at Game 6. But you know, I think that's my mindset. And like I said, all full cards on the table. The World Series isn't going to get taken away.
Yeah,
you know,
that is very true.
The wins are all there.
All the ticket revenue doesn't get taken away from the owners. They never had to pay for any of this.
And all of Clemens and Bonds money and awards don't get taken away. They still, and all the love that they got all those years.
They don't.
You're getting me back to not feeling sympathetic for it.
Oh,
they got rewarded for what they did. And there's this one thing
they're hated
really
now.
And what?
They're hated now. Barry Bonds is truly hated.
He is very vilified.
Yeah. When he pulled off the greatest season in offense history, where he had more times on base than he had at bats in a season.
He had more intentional walks than he had hits in one of the seasons.
Yeah. It's the craziest thing ever.
We gotta wind this up.
So
I want to point out arguments that we didn't make, that people make, that piss me off. When none of us are making it, the idea that like steroids don't help you hit a baseball. That one really pisses me off.
That's fallacy.
There is they would never have. They never would have been taking that stuff if it didn't have an impact. Anyway,
I'm glad none of us tried to bring that up, because I would have made fun of us for doing
shiny object over here. It's not true.
Yeah.
The one that, you mentioned it earlier. I actually don't remember who mentioned it. And I do think this is where, to me, it's where the discussion is really interesting, is it's the fringe players. It's the ones that they now have Hall of Fame stats, but they didn't have Hall of Fame stats before. And you can extend that even down to, it's the bottom of the roster guys. It's the guys that were like, if I don't take steroids, I'm getting cut. But if I take steroids, I have a roster spot. And that's where I feed my family. I'm feeding. And so it's like, and I'm not saying it's right, but I understand the looking around going, well, I'm competing against him. All right, I'll bend over and inject me in the butt,
That's why it's so bad, is that it forced a generation of people to do it to keep up. And
that is true.
And when they did the hearings, it was because we had high school people that had rampant steroid problems.
Bud Selig is responsible for that, not Roger Clemens.
And therefore, we'll somehow blame it on the Brewers.
Bud Selig could go in that ugly room that they put in the back.
Yeah.
Call him Selig win if
he's going in the furthest corner. All right. Okay, so we're wrapping it up. We're already running long. I want to give each of you another chance to just give a single paragraph, and then we'll wrap it up from there. Clone, why don't you start? Give us, wrap up your thoughts.
I'll be real short. I mean, I already said, I don't feel like you should be forced to honor the guys, but Mac, Mac made me feel not too great about some of my arguments too, so I'm not gonna.
What about my arguments?
I
I
don't wanna
killed
hear
it with the
yours.
Pud Gidley thing, right? Or Galvin thing.
I just think you got to take each vote as you can, but I'm not trying to hurt the fans in it, so I can see an angle that way. But I still suggest that everybody, even maybe now, they vote in Bonds and they say the next year after he's gone, he gets in the Hall of Fame. Nobody likes that idea.
No. All right, Mac.
You know, it is. It's like I said from the beginning. I watched baseball as a kid growing up, played it as a kid growing up. I suspect anybody watching this probably says the same thing. I have memories to specific players. I watched certain things happen, and I definitely think the stance that a lot of writers have taken is they don't care about the generation of players I grew up watching, and I just think it's wrong. So that's when it all comes down to it. That's what their actions and stances, the message that gets sent to me, and I think they're wrong.
There it is. And I will just wrap up by saying I appreciate that we all agree that most of this is completely unethical and a absolute derangement syndrome around the steroid era. Clone, thank you for being a man, and I do accept your apology. We are out of here.